Hello and welcome, Jay Fazette here, and I have an invitation for anyone here who is interested in becoming an exceptionally talented facilitator. Now, I want to be very clear about this, is that there's all kinds of different ways to communicate with an audience. I mean, there's plain old public speaking, where you're going to inspire someone, perhaps in a keynote or a short span of time. Then there's teaching, where I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to intake, and you're going to learn, you're going to practice it, and you're going to do whatever it is that you're going to do. Then there's selling from stage, a combination of entertainment, a combination of inspiration, and a combination of plain old selling. All of those are very unique skill sets. But I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about facilitating experiential workshops and seminars. And the reason that this distinction is so important is that so many people want to create the transformations that really last for people, and yet they don't have the skills to actually make it happen. Because let's be clear about this, inspiration does not generally turn into transformation. Education does not generally turn into transformation. Selling some crap from the stage does not generally turn into transformation. But I can tell you what does. After 30 years in the personal transformation space, delivering experiential workshops and programs to tens of thousands of people, training, certifying coaches, facilitators in the process, what I can tell you is this: when we utilize the experiential learning model, and I'm going to tell you some of the key pieces in our facilitator training program or our facilitator development program, we actually take the idea from their head to their heart to their feet so that the transformation actually occurs. The whole purpose of the facilitator development program is for you to design, market, and deliver your own experiential workshop. What that means is you're going to create your own intellectual property. What that means is that you'll have your own program that will be an experiential workshop that you can also turn into a book, you can turn it into an online program, you can turn it into anything your little heart desires. But it will start with the experiential workshop. Now, if you're the right person listening, I have intrigued you. And you have already noticed the distinctions between rah-rah motivational stuff and true transformation. So I want to tell you a little bit about what makes our facilitator development program different. Number one is this, is that we utilize the experiential learning model. Now, the experiential learning model basically has 5 steps. And honest to goodness, this is something that you already know, but doesn't mean that you could actually replicate it or teach it or any of those pieces. But it's how you've learned everything. And I'll share what the 5 steps are, and I'm going to point out where most facilitators, where most trainers, where most programs fall epically short. And if you can just do this one thing, and we'll teach you how, and you'd have a ton of practice in our program to do it exceptionally well, it puts you in like the top, perhaps 2, 3, 4% of all facilitators on planet Earth. So here's what the experiential learning model is in a nutshell. Number 1, there's an activity. You do something. And that's not rocket science. We all know that you go to workshops, seminars, programs, you do something. Now, but the next piece is there has to be some time for what we call publishing. And publishing is this process of noticing what it is, noticing what's going on, noticing what happens within me, noticing some of my reactions. So once that happens, that we have this little moment of publishing, it's like, hey, and that's just noticing. Then we move to what we call processing. And that's where we begin to think about, so what does this actually mean? How does it apply to me? What's going on? Now, once that happens, we naturally move into something called generalizing. And generalizing is where it's like, well, if this particular thing is true here, where else does it apply? If I had this reaction or I noticed this about my behavior in this particular exercise and activity, then what does it mean about how I relate to my wife? What does it mean in terms of how I treat my children? What does it mean in terms of how I show up in my life and in my world? What does it mean in terms of, so we begin to take this one idea and we generalize it in terms of what it actually means, the true influence and impact that it's having in our lives. Now, this is where if you've ever been in a workshop or a program or a seminar and somebody, there's an activity's done and somebody gets up and says, oh, you know what I just noticed? What I just noticed is that I have been withholding myself in my relationships with my spouse because I've been afraid of getting hurt or some version of thereof. And it's like a big meaningful breakthrough and there might be emotions and those sorts of things. And the room goes, oh yeah, that's great, fantastic. Oh, what a marvelous breakthrough. Now, this is the son of a gun, gang. This is truly the son of a gun. Is that process from activity all the way to generalizing, if you are semi-skilled, it is not difficult to do. Except, generally speaking, what happens is that after the acknowledgement of good for you, Then the person goes back to their chair, they go back to their life, and please hear this, not one damn thing changes. Because they have missed the final, and I believe the most important step that a facilitator must master. And after we generalize, we then must take the next step up to apply. And what that means is, if this is true, what am I going to apply to be and do differently in my life right now? Because if we don't get to the step and stage of how I'm going to apply and what I'm going to be and do differently, guess what happens? We don't create the next activity, which is this new way of being, this new way of doing, which triggers and perpetuates the experiential learning model. And it's why just getting to generalizing, just noticing what's going on is nowhere near enough. It's not. So in our Facilitator Development Program, we teach the experiential learning model by giving you a multitude of examples of exercises, workshops, programs, all of those pieces, but you also design your own. And when you begin to design your own exercises, activities, and processes, and begin to work through that entire model, and you do so, by the way, with other people in the program. You test your activities, you get real and live feedback. You know in an instant, did this work or did it not work? Did they complete the cycle or did they not complete the cycle? When you master that, you get into the realm of truly becoming a facilitating master. A facilitating master. And by the way, I want you to understand, I've had people who have come to our Facilitator Development Program who have been facilitating for decades. And in fact, I often have them rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of their skills right at the beginning. And a dear friend of mine, in fact, you'll probably meet him as he participates with us often now, he believed he came in the door at an 8, perhaps an 8.5. And once he began to master all of the skills that we teach, including, of course, the experiential learning model, he believed he was actually really at a 3. Now, here's a man who was talented. So I just want you to understand, do not dismiss the simplicity of the model for the power, because it will change lives. The actual design of your workshop itself will also follow the experiential learning model. We will start at the beginning of the whole thing of publishing and processing, which is really noticing what's going on in a life area that you were going to focus on with your workshop. Then we're going to move it into this whole thing about publishing and generalizing. Well, what does this actually mean? And then the later part of your workshop will be more about the generalizing and applying, so that when they go out in their life, they actually be and do things differently. And that will put your workshop in a completely different realm than most. I trust that makes good sense to you. Another very powerful aspect of the Facilitator Development Program is this. You will design, develop, and refine your own what we call processing framework. Now, processing framework can be a bit of a complex idea, but think of it from this perspective, is that if you have a participant and they are in spot A and you want to support them to get to spot Z, or Z, depending if you're American or not, if you want to do that, there are a series of steps and processes that will assist your participant in getting from point A to point B. It's called a processing framework. Now, the truth is this, many facilitators aren't perfectly clear about what their processing framework is. It's more of like an intuitive process. Well, I listen to what they say and then I make some suggestions, then I guide them along. Well, that's all well and fine, and sometimes it works beautifully and often it doesn't. But when you have your own processing framework defined, and by the way, defined in such a manner that if you were to give your workshop to a facilitator of similar skill and ability, they could create the consistent results, regardless who's in the room. They could create the same results. That's how well it is done. When your processing framework is defined, what happens is this, is the consistency of your results in your program go, from a 3 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. And the honest to God truth is, most people don't have a clue what it is. Now, if you're sitting there going like, so what the hell is a processing framework? Well, I'll give you two super simple examples. Dr. Laura, and just to be clear about this, I'm not a huge fan of Dr. Laura, but she is perfectly clear about her processing framework. Every conversation she has, it is built around one fundamental idea, because her framework is fairly simple. Her processing framework is this: do the right thing. Don't care how you feel, do the right thing. Don't care if it hurts, do the right thing. Don't care if it's inconvenient, do the right thing. Or at the end of the day, you could possibly do the right thing. Now, I'm not a huge fan of her, but I tell you what, I love her consistency with her processing framework. So she has a whole set of, foundational beliefs based upon her religion and those pieces about what the right thing is, and that's what you should do, full stop. Now, that's one example. I'll give you another example, is there's a model that fundamentally says this: our results in life are exactly equal to our beliefs, our attitudes, and our behaviors. And if we want to get different results, then we would need to change beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. So what we often will do is focus on the behaviors. Just change the behaviors. It's going to change the result. Except it's not really sustainable. Then we focus on the attitude. You know, that whole attitude is like, hey, be more positive, then you'll be able to change your behaviors better. That really isn't sustainable either. But if we're really wanting to change our results, we should get clear about what the beliefs that are operating on a conscious and less than conscious level. Let's do the work at shifting the beliefs so that naturally the attitude shifts and the behavior shift, which must impact the results. So the processing framework with that model is, we would always be trying to discover what are the beliefs. Do they support the result you want or not? And then align the beliefs to get the results that you want. That's an example of a processing framework. Those are two ultra simple ones, but we would help you create yours so that your workshop is off the charts exceptional. Another of the exceptionally powerful pillars of the Facilitator Development Program is this: your personal context. Now, I want to be clear about this, is that in any program, there is the content of the program. And the honest goodness truth is, in most cases, we could train a monkey to deliver the content. The content is not that complex. So that's the words, that's the message, all those things. Then there is what we're going to call the context of the ideas that the content is trying to communicate. That's all well and fine. We can hold the big idea of what a concept is. But here's where most people fall epically short. They fall epically short on their personal context. What that means is who they are as human beings, who they are as leaders, their alignment and the living of the ideas that they are presenting in their classroom or presenting in their workshop. That alignment piece is imperative. And you must be clear about what your personal context is. And by the way, I'm not saying you need to be perfect. God knows if nobody would ever enter the room if that was the case, by the way. But you've got to be clear about what your personal context is, what your limitations are, what you're working on, how you are personally evolving, so that you can bring all of you to the classroom to serve and support your clients. Now, the whole personal context piece is game changing. And it is something that, frankly, by my perception and judgment, 30 years in this industry, it is something that most people do not spend enough time on. Which, by the way, here's a little hint. In the intense personal transformation space, most facilitators have a lifespan of 3 years, maybe 5 years. And the reason being is that they are out of alignment with what it is that they are really teaching. They are out of alignment with their personal context, with the large context of their training. And the price tag for that is that the workshops consume inordinate energy. They take 2 or 3 days to recuperate and to recover. It's draining on them. And here's the honest to God truth about this. Being who you are, leading a tribe you love, communicating a message that is important to the world is not draining. It's draining if you are out of alignment. It's draining if you're telling a bullshit story. It's draining if you're not taking care of yourself. That is called the price tag for the act and the lie. And the truth of the matter is this: you get those things in alignment, you should be as inspired, you should be as motivated, you should be as moving and shaken as your participants are the day after the course, not drained. If you're feeling drained and beat up, you have a personal context issue of epic proportions, and we'd be happy to help with that. Now, another one of the core pillars of the program is something that we call grounding questions. And grounding questions is a tool that I designed and developed, goodness, 20 plus years ago when I first started my own facilitator training process. And then as I began to train other facilitators, it became a way for people to be able to understand what something means, develop their own personal examples, bring themselves to a fully embodied state with a particular concept or idea. And grounding questions, by the way, can be one of the most powerful experiences under the sun for expanding our own personal context. Now, there are only 5 questions. Those 5 questions will absolutely, utterly, and completely change how you view yourself. It provides the framework to do your own work, and it causes you to be a facilitator that walks your talk. It causes you to be a facilitator that has examples of every concept working and not working, and clear, clean, and grounded enough to be able to share both for the service and support of your participants. So that is just one of the tips and tricks under the umbrella of facilitator skills, both basic and advanced. Now, in the realm of advanced facilitator skills, by the way, this is where we do things like room control. This is where we do things like creating agreement. This is where we do things like how to set up engagement and participation. How to teach your processing framework as you teach the course so that people can actually do it on their own after the program. So these are all the skills that are necessary to design, market, and deliver your own experiential workshop. And in our training, it is a 7.5-day intensive process. Just to be clear about that, 5 of those are live in person, actually practicing what it is you're designing and utilizing the tools, and a half day is prep online, and 2 full days are follow-up online for you to make sure that you execute the design of your workshop and get your workshop actually completed. Now, if anything that I've been saying is making sense to you in terms of the distinction between public speaking and facilitating, the distinction between inspiration and transformation, and you really want the tools, for goodness sakes, what I'd like you to do is to click the button and to book a call with one of my team members to talk about what facilitator training could do for you in your business. Now, I want you to understand, this training is not inexpensive. This training is an investment that you will make in your life. This is a training you will invest to make in your business. This is an investment in the creation of your own intellectual property that you can leverage in a multitude of different ways. But if you are truly dedicated to transformation, click the button and talk to one of my coaches. They will assess if this is right for you. They will answer all of your questions. You will see if it's right for you. And if you choose to participate, please know that this is a very small and intimate process. And we keep it small and intimate so that you can make certain that you actually design that workshop, that you get time in front of the classroom to test your ideas and to test your grounding and to test your activities. This is not some, free-for-all. So there's only a handful of seats. If you are interested in being in one of those seats and really making the difference that you want to make, click the button, talk to one of my coaches, and I would look forward to serving and supporting you to be one of the few that takes a stand for true transformation. Not just inspiration, not just selling some stuff from stage, not just teaching a skill, but transforming people's lives, heart, mind, and soul. I'll see you there. Click the button.